Today I'm gonna talk about why starting something new isn't that difficult anymore. And I'm gonna prove it by building wooden shutters, which I never did before. And they are not your standard wooden shutters either. Well, more of this size. This is the remaining out of 2 shutters. The second one sadly fell victim to a storm. Even though I still have this one, I'm gonna build 2 new ones out of 2 reasons. First of all, this one is built a little bit more complex than necessary. Secondly, this one isn't in a good shape either. And it's just easier to build 2 things that are identical than building one that is supposed to look like something you didn't build. Now what I have here is Douglas fir, which is commonly used for outside projects in general, mostly because it is very weatherproof, which in my case is just a bonus because I'm gonna paint them anyway. In preparation for this project, I did what I always do. I search for videos where someone is building something similar to what I attempt to build, and I do that to avoid potential problems that might be waiting for me, and basically to learn from others' mistakes. Maybe that's the reason you are watching this video right now. But for wooden outdoor shutters, I personally haven't found a lot. So my research ended in a little bit of frustration. And that's where I realized that, and this might sound a little bit cheesy, having access to such a huge library like YouTube or even the combined internet made many things a lot easier. I have made furniture for over 2 years now, and all my knowledge comes from the internet, and my own mistakes of course. So what I'm trying to say is that learning new skills never has been easier. And while building these wooden shutters, I really had some doubt if I could actually get it done. And this made the project a little bit chewy for me. I tried to stay as close to the original as possible with building the frame, because maybe every little detail might have its own purpose that I simply don't know yet. So like the original, I built the frame with some jointery, and for that I bought myself some cheap template rudder bits and made mortises with them and a little scrap piece that I used as a guide. I bet there are a lot of different and probably better ways to do that, but I thought this might be the easiest for me. But there was no way to get past some Japanese pull saw action. And of course some chiseling. This is my first time making jointery this big, and let's just say everything fits, but only with its right counterpart. Not only the lack of content for wooden shutters made it difficult for me to build that, but it was also very repetitive. Now it's time to build the louvers, and I needed 44 of these, with routing over 176 edges, sanding them, later filling some with wood filler, then sanding again, and painting 2 to 3 layers took me weeks. To be honest, mostly because it was so boring and I just couldn't stand sanding for longer than an hour. I made some additional ones, which was a smart move because while routing over the edges, some of them got damaged and were unusable, and this way I just had some spare ones. As I said, it was just very repetitive. Now to a more interesting part. I wanted to make a template for routing in the mortises for the louvers, and for that I started with making a 3D model. I used that to calculate how much material I will need, and to make a template for the template, which I can make a big wooden template out of. It will make more sense when you see it. Now this is the theory and everything looks good in CAD. The first 2 templates are 3D printed. So here's the first template. Not this one, I messed that one up. Yeah, that one as well. Okay, this should be the right one. Oh no, wrong measurements, wrong diameter. Okay, I think that's the one. Well, the reality is often a little different than CAD. This is the second template. Ignore the sanding. Now the second template fits in the first one, and with that I can route out mortise by mortise. I drilled a hole in first, so I don't have to deal with plunging my trim router, which destroyed the first two templates I printed. You could definitely make a template like this easier with a jigsaw or something, but I really wanted to invest in making a good template that I could reuse in the future, and that's why I made myself all the work with the 3D printing stuff. And in the end, the template made it very easy to copy everything onto the beam and saved me a lot of work. I did a little mistake here. The joinery on the frame isn't really perfect, but it fits in its distinct place. So I really need to be careful to route in the mortises the right way, so they're mirrored to each other. If not, I'll end up with an X shape and the louvers simply won't fit. Which is exactly what happened here. I thought about different ways to fix that problem, but I ended up taking a spare louver and cutting it into small pieces that I could use to fill the mortises, and after that just route them in the right way. And this actually worked pretty well. Another thing I noticed on the original shutter is that the top beam is chamfered, which I guess has purpose for the rain to slide down, so of course I did that as well. Wood filler is something I used a lot on this project, with Douglas fir being coniferous
wood.
There were a lot of imperfections to fill. Painting the louvers really showed me something. I tried estimating how long it would take me to build the shutters, and I thought a few weeks would be more than enough. Of course I learned from other projects and from repairing cars that every time I think I could get something done in an hour, I need at least 2. In this case, painting alone took me combined 3 days maybe. Making multiple layers of paint, getting into every hole and crack, painting one side, then waiting for it to dry so I could paint the other side, took just way more time and patience than I thought. It is finally time. putting everything together. The one advice I found online was assembling everything upright would be easier, so I did that. With the help of my dad, we tried getting every louver in one side first. But it very quickly turned out that louvers were falling out by themselves, and even if we would get all of them to stay in place, there would be no chance of putting the other beam on all of the louvers at once. So instead we laid the whole thing down and started to jiggle them in one by one. It was actually a good idea to grab some clamps that would hold the thing together while we try to get the other louvers in. And this is basically the process that I discovered to be the most useful, really. It was still very tricky though, and we decided to abandon this try and chamfer all the louvers so they would slide in a little bit easier. Eventually we got the first one assembled and everything was looking pretty promising. With a lot learned from the first assembly, the second one went much smoother. So smooth that I would say it was close to being very satisfying. At this point, it felt like I was getting something done and we're really making progress here. It is just so satisfying to assemble something that you've worked on for so long and everything fits somewhat in the first try, and this really gave me a motivational boost, which I really needed because there was still a lot of work to do. I was getting closer and closer to finishing this project, but now, once again, I need to take care of all the imperfections, so it's time for wood filler and sanding. I want to be honest now. For the first time, the person I've built something for wasn't that happy with the result. Some of the beams weren't totally flat and you could see the grain. I'll show you that in a minute. Building big things in my small shop showed me this time that it would be beneficial to sometimes take a few steps back and take a good look on the overall piece. While I was working on the shutters, I was way too close to them. I just couldn't make myself an overall image of how they would actually be looked at. And seeing them on the house the first time showed me that. So this chapter isn't over for me yet. There's still some work to do, and besides that, even though this might be the most complicated project I've ever made, I learned and used a lot of new techniques and needed to come up with solutions for problems I've never had before. This project tested my endurance with all the repetitive cuts and sanding, but with every project, and this one in particular, I learned something about my passion. Not only that, I also learn a lot about myself. And with that said, thank you for watching.